Back live tonight here on In Focus, the Mineral Resources and Energy Portfolio Committee has been conducting public hearings on the Electricity Regulation Amendment Bill in the Sibande District Municipality in Mpumalanga. The residents there have expressed mixed reaction on the draft legislation, with those in support saying there is a possibility of opening the market for competitive electricity trading there, where others who expressed concerns over corruption, but also to help us now understand a little bit more what people are saying, but also what the bill intends to achieve. We're joined by the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Mineral Resources and Energy, Sahlulele Luzipo. Good to have you, Chairperson, and thank you very much for your time and for coming on. So as the work continues, are you getting a sense that people understand the intention of why you seek to amend this bill?
Good evening to you, Tibos, as well as your viewership. Like you have said, I think we must say that it's very difficult to understand or to deal with what is called the mineral energy complex because of the nature of the industry itself. But to some degree, we've got a duty as public representative in this case, in as much as the bill may not have been introduced by a private member. It is a bill that is introduced by the department. It is also our duty that when we go to our people, the first thing that we have said we have to do is, one, is to listen to them in terms of their submissions, but before we get to that, we first explain or try to introduce what are the key elements that they require to understand. And in the process of submissions that are being made, we then also have an understanding that they will then be a little bit clearer before they came to the meeting. So I would say many of the areas where we have been, and I think I must say we have been in Limpopo, now we're done with Limpopo. We finished it last week, Friday. We dealt with Mpumalanga. We finished it today. We dealt all the 3 districts in Mpumalanga. I would say 80 to 90% of the people were speaking directly to what the bill is all about. Yeah. There is one thing that we can't run away and pretend that it would not be an issue. The current situation of our electricity crisis is one of those issues, and the current state of ESCOM and how it is performing in relation to community demands, community needs, and community interests. Yes. Those were some of the issues that they expressed, although unfortunately they wouldn't fall under the ambit of the portfolio committee on mineral resources and energy. Yes. But we have said that we understand why they can express their frustration currently with the crisis on electricity, as well as issues of performance by the power utility, which is ESCOM.
There are some would be opposing the bill and they would say, well, this is an attempt of privatization of electricity generation in the country. Is that a broad understanding of the people on the ground, or do people understand it differently? Or maybe they do understand it as opening the space and bringing in private sector, but they welcome it?
Look, I don't want to, when you are a chairperson, people must say that this man, because in this case is a man, that this man is as objective as possible. So I wouldn't want to be dragged in terms of what are the which is better than the other. The reality is that there are people who feel very strongly that the current proposed amendment in relation to this bill and the mere fact that private actors will be using the public infrastructure, specifically the ESCOM infrastructure in municipalities. Some of them feel that this is nothing else but a precursor towards the privatization of electricity in this country. But there are those who feel very strongly that whether you like it or not, private sector has got a role to play. And therefore, if private sector has got a role to play, it is necessary that it should be regulated. And I think those are some of the things that, therefore, in the final analysis and at the end of this entire process, we as now legislatures, having received the views of the people, having made a proper assessment and a proper researched work, how do we then manage that? If we say there is a role for the private sector, how do we think that process has to be regulated? And to what extent does it go? They were raising issues, for an example, about tariffs and pricing. How do we deal with the question of the pricing regime. We'll have to look at that, whether you need to regulate in the same way you might be doing in terms of the regulation of fuel, for instance, or any other areas. So we will have to come to that conclusion at the end of the public hearings, and at that time, most definitely, we will be more informed, even ourselves as legislators, on even what would be unintended consequences of the amendment itself. But I would say generally there is a view that says, yes, you need to attend to the issue of electricity reform, but how do you do it? It must be in the best interest of every South African, particularly those, the poor. It should not make the poor to be worse off than they might be right now.
What does the bill in its amended form, or the draft at least, say around municipalities to be allowed to generate their own electricity? I want to say to an extent some municipalities already are doing that. So is it something that is already in our electricity regulation that municipalities can do that? Or is there something new that is being introduced by this bill?
You will recall that at some point we were at 10 megawatts when it was what we call embedded generation. And then with the president's announcement last year in the State of the Nation address, that was increased to up to 100 megawatts. I think currently now you don't have, in terms of the proposal here, there is no ceiling in terms of what could be done in terms of what is called embedded generation. I understand the context that you are talking about is the question of self-use. That's what now the bill seeks to introduce in terms of electricity generation for self-use. And then it also seeks to say if there is surplus, how will that surplus be utilized for in terms of the grid? But what is being proposed is what is that we need all of us to interrogate, and through this public hearing they will be able others to say, look, what is being proposed here is not actually what it means, or yes, it may be what it means, but the limitation of it is that you don't have mechanisms, what we'll call checks and balances, whether what is being proposed will happen. Now, like we have said, that like one would say now that in terms of the transmission systems operator, one of its responsibilities is coordination of electricity to the grid. And amongst other things is the utilization of the municipal infrastructure, ESCOM municipal infrastructure. So to give an answer to yourself now, that is what the bill seeks to propose, that there must be given additional capacity, including the role of municipalities in terms of electricity generation.
So we saw earlier in April, for example, ESCOM taking some small town there in the Free State, small municipality, to court because the small community says they want to use their own solar system to reduce load shedding. And ESCOM says, no, you can't do that. Is this amendment going to address such things where that community in the Free State will now be able to do so?
No, I don't want to create expectations that may not necessarily be correct. Let's allow this as, and I would rather say they should be when we conduct public hearings, and I hope when we go to Free State, they will make that strong, because one of the things that I think is a limitation to our people is that sometimes the process of consultation, I don't know whether there's so much mistrust on public or on processes that are conducted, including public consultations. We would expect that when we go to Free State, they will be able to come in terms of their presentation and say, from our own experience in the amendment, you must do 1, 2, and 3, because, and I could say ESCOM would have done that on the basis that the law did not allow it. We hope now people will come up front very strongly if on any matter that they feel about. It will be then the jury will be on us when we do the finalization in terms of the deliberation of the act to say, yes, we think that this matter has to be accommodated. We'll then go back even to the department itself and say, do you have a problem if people are raising issues in this nature? We'll check with the chief state law advisors. And if that is in the best interest of the country, I don't think that we will then have to ignore what we think it stands to benefit the country.
Chairperson, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Mineral Resources and Energy, Sahlulele Luzipo.